Well, I think we should probably start. So, yes, I'd just like to introduce Ray Kennedy of Cotswold Archaeology, who will be talking about a recent project on Ludgershall Castle. I can't. When was this project from, Ray? Date?
November 2019.
Yeah, lovely. From last
Yeah,
year, then.
yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Right, I will. You can hear you clearly. You can see the picture. I will turn myself off. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you. Uh, Hi, everybody. I'm Ray Kennedy. I'm a project manager at Cotswold and Cotswold Archaeology's Andover office, and I'm here to talk about Cotswold's recent, last year, watch and brief and subsequent excavation on Castle Farm next to Ludgershall Castle. In November 2019, Cotswold undertook a watch and brief and subsequent excavation 30 meters to the west of the outer earthworks of this scheduled monument of Ludgershall Castle. You can see it here in the map, location of Ludgershall within Wiltshire, and also the location of the site here, Castle Farm. The works were during construction of a new barn as part on the farm, which is leased from the MOD. During the course of the excavation, we identified remains spanning from the late Iron Age to post-medieval. I'll just give you a bit of background on Ludgershall and the castle before I move on to the excavation, discussing the excavation. Ludgershall is obviously based on the Wiltshire-Hampshire border to the north of Salisbury, with the site itself comprising a farmyard and barns to the south and east of the earthworks and the remains of the castle. Ludgershall was first mentioned in 1015 in the will of the Etheling Ethelstan, where it's recorded as Ludgershall. And at the time of Doomsday in 1086, it was a relatively prosperous manor under Edward of Salisbury, an Englishman and substantial landholder within Wiltshire, who was also the sheriff of the county. It is likely that it was Edward who actually built the castle initially, but by 1138, it had been fortified, so came under the control of John Marshall, who was the father of the famous knight William Marshall. It played an active part in the anarchy of between Empress Maud and King Stephen in the 12th century, with Matilda actually fleeing to Ludgershall following the siege of Winchester. Extant remains of Ludgershall Castle comprise the northern and southern earthwork enclosures with a ruined tower and other foundations surviving to the north. During the 13th century, the castle was remodeled with a keep replaced by mural towers and a viewing platform of on the northern defences. And by the mid-13th century, Henry III had undertaken a programme of repair and replacement of various buildings, turning the castle into a fortified country house. By the 15th century, the castle had become neglected and fallen into ruin, and much of the stone had been robbed to build a hunting lodge. It was subsequently incorporated into a landscape garden of the private house, which is actually now just to the south of Ludgershall Castle itself. With more recent works include the construction, with the southern enclosure now occupied by Castle Farm. Substantial areas within the castle were excavated between 1964 and 1972, which revealed various structural remains, as well as excavating a section through the inner bank and ditch. Multiple phases of both stone and timber structures were excavated, and pottery of early 12th century from the earliest stratigraphic layers were found within the northern enclosure, which gives a good indication of the early state of the castle. Excavations within the southern enclosure revealed numerous mid-12th century pits and widespread evidence for lime production, along with further stone buildings of 14th century date. There was also a watch and brief in the car park of Ludgershall Castle in 2007, but that only identified post-medieval and modern deposits and nothing relating to the Iron Age or medieval periods. As we move on, here you can see a plan of the excavated ditch section that was dug through the enclosure, northern enclosure during the 60s and 70s excavations. And here you can see a pre-12th century plan of the hill fort with the castle in, with what we think is a hill fort previous from which the castle was built, and then the chapel and the various open spaces around what would have been what later became the village of Ludgershall. The excavated section in the inner southern earthwork revealed 2 phases of medieval construction, along with possible evidence of prehistoric hill fort bank. With there is suggestion that the earthworks are of a different date, with the southern earthwork potentially an Iron Age hill fort that was subject to later modification, but to date, no strong evidence as this has been found. It remains a conjecture. The siting of the castle occupies an unfilled gap in the general distribution of hill forts in this part of Wiltshire, and there are numerous Celtic field systems visible on aerial photography within the surrounding fields around the castle, giving further credence to the idea that the castle was actually of earlier date. While the Ludgershall is not an especially prominent location then or now, topographically, the site and Water Village do occupy a low plateau, which may have been attractive for early settlement. And this is just some pictures of the what started as a watching brief during the construction of the new barn. That was when we revealed the ditches that I'm going to talk about now. And as I said, it was the site itself is 30 meters to the west of the Ludgershall earthworks and the scheduled monuments, and the formation level of the structure being built was 0.3 below ground level. So we very quickly came across the natural. Okay, some pictures of the area where we're building. Okay, the watching brief. We excavated 2 areas, trenches 1 and 2. Trench 1 covered the entirety of the development area and contained numerous archaeological features. And trench 2 just consisted of a soakaway where we didn't reveal any archaeology. Very limited dating evidence was recovered from during the course of the excavation, and the phasing that I'm going to now outline is only tentatively suggested, based on limited datable evidence and inference of spatial and stratigraphic relationships. So as you can see, the purple ditch is what we believe to be a possible defensive late Iron Age, early Romano-British ditch, which conforms to the enclosures. And then in green, you have some a potential medieval droveway. That's what we believe the ditches in green were. And then, sorry, the ditches in green here in light green, we believe is a droveway. And then ditch 4 here, we believe is a later addition to the droveway where they may have closed it off. But obviously, unfortunately, it's outside the scope of the works we did. So we had pretty limited area of where we were actually digging. And then the darker green is post-medieval ditches, and then blue is obviously modern. And the pink ones are a number of 3 throws we found across the site, from which we recorded no dating evidence. But the majority of the interest for this project is the purple ditch, where we found evidence of late Iron Age archaeology. Okay, I'll just go through the various phasings. First, a number of 3 throws. There was a number of undated 3 throws, 2 of which were truncated by the late Iron Age ditch, which we're calling ditch 1. And the ditch represents the earliest features we found on site. The 3 throws are suggestive of a wooded landscape that was probably likely subject to clearance prior to the late Iron Age. And ditch 1 here is a curvy linear north east-southwest aligned feature which has evidence of an internal bank and appeared to broadly respect the curving outer earthwork of the castle. The ditch had a maximum width of 2.5 meters and a depth of 1 meter. And its primary and secondary fills were present throughout, and 2 shards of pottery, 1 Iron Age and 1 Romano-British, was recovered from the secondary fill. Sealing these deposits and visibly sloping downwards to the west was a fill that likely represents the deliberate slighting of the bank to the east of the ditch. Trying to align myself. We think this is the deliberate slighting, this 142 here. And evidence of animal burrowing was also present throughout this fill, particularly along this eastern edge. The bank material was then sealed by a deliberate backfill containing a shard of Iron Age pottery, 3 shards of early Romano-British pottery, and burnt flint. Ditch 1 was likely constructed in the late Iron Age and was last in use in the early Roman period. It is too substantial to represent a field boundary, and the presence of the internal bank indicates it was defensive in nature. The artifactual material from the upper fill suggests the ditch was fully backfilled in the same period in which it fell out of use. And as you can see from the photographs, you can see the steepness of the slope of the ditch and also its width with the modern land drain cutting through it. And this is another slot where we dug it. And we believe anyway that these ditches are too wide and too deep to just represent field boundary ditches. And so potentially they represent an early defensive ditches within the area of what became Ludgershall Castle. The second phase is medieval, which was the trackway or droveway. It had contained 2 parallel ditches, the westernmost of which was truncated by the Iron Age ditch. As you can see on the here where it truncates the Iron Age ditch. These ditches are likely medieval, but we only have a small quantity of residual material. And ditch 4, which was the later truncation of the trackway, we record East Wiltshire ware pottery, which is again broadly dated to the medieval period. But it was also truncated by 2 post-medieval ditches and a pit. And then post-medieval, the ditch 5, which we're calling the post-medieval ditch, was closely aligned to the modern field boundary and probably represents a slightly earlier alignment and minor shifting of the boundaries in the early medieval and post-medieval period. It's a linear earthwork recorded. Linear earthworks recorded on to the south on mapping on the same alignment, and it in a plan produced by the Royal Commission, and it's probable that this ditch is a continuation of that. So that's basically the substance of what we found at Ludgershall during the course of this excavation. As I said, it was a very small excavation during the construction of this agricultural barn. But despite the relatively confined nature of the excavation area, we have reached a firm conclusion. Because of this confined nature of the excavation, we couldn't reach firm conclusions in regard to the overall dating of the features within the water landscape. But the fact that ditch 1 is we believe is Iron Age in Iron Age and represents and respects the outer earthworks of Ludgershall Castle and was likely constructed in that period is significant. The ditch is significant as it provides the first firm evidence for prehistoric activity at Ludgershall Castle, perhaps even of the hill fort, which has been previously suggested as existing prior to the construction of the medieval castle. And that's it, really. As I said, it was a very small excavation and a very short presentation. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Oh, I have one question.
Hello, Ray.
Uh,
Thanks, Ray. There's one question on the Q&A at the moment, which is from Sally Thompson. Was this a promontory hill fort?
well, the hill fort's only really postulated. We don't have any actually firm evidence that there was an Iron Age hill fort. It's always been postulated, but the excavation we've done is the first evidence that there was Iron Age defences within the area, which therefore suggests that the castle probably has an earlier date. But
and in terms of and if I can sort of develop on from that, in terms of where the contours work for where the castle ended up, do you think it's likely that the castle defences sort of followed the same line as the Iron Age did? Do you think that would have been visible at the time?
Yes, that's what we think anyway. So that this ditch, because it runs on the same alignment as the castle enclosure and the enclosure ditches of the castle. We think that it probably is part of maybe the earlier defense of a potential Iron Age hill fort. It may even represent maybe the earliest phase while they were building the hill fort. It may represent maybe an early defense while they were building the larger hill fort, if there was a hill fort there. There's a lot of maybes, unfortunately, but until we find firm evidence that there is actually that Ludgershall is definitively an Iron Age hill fort with a castle on top of it, we can't really say for sure.
Yeah. And Katie,
sorry, Dave,
Dan.
I was just going to ask about just to follow that one, the width of the Iron Age ditch.
Yeah.
I didn't catch what is the width of it?
It's 2.5 meters as it currently is, but obviously it would have been wider when you add topsoil and everything on top of it. And you also would have had the bank on top of it as well. So the ditch was probably 3 or more meters wide originally, with a bank then on top of it.
So it's quite a substantial.
Yeah, it's relatively substantial. It's too big to be a agricultural ditch.
Yeah,
much too big. And also its shades kind of V-shape indicates a kind of defensive nature.
Okay.
And any evidence of palisade or anything like that on the inside?
We only
presumably being truncated.
Yeah, we only found the remnant of the bank slump within and we found very little. We found no other evidence of anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So Katie Whitaker's asked, how does the site relate to later prehistoric field systems in the locality?
I don't know the answers to that, unfortunately.
Didn't have the luxury of doing a full geophysical survey of 10 miles around here.
There is a number of Celtic field systems that are visible within LiDAR and within aerial photography. So I'm sure someone else has obviously probably done work in relation to the hill property and the castle and how it relates to those field systems.
Mm.
And Amy Young has asked about the castle in general. You'll know where the water table is. Do you know if the moat would have been had water in it, or whether it would have been a dry moat?
In common with most moats, it probably was dry, but kind of filled at times. But I think generally most moats were dry in nature, and I'm not sure if you call it a moat really so much as a defensive ditch. But yeah, it most likely would have been dry most of the year. The castle itself, it was probably when Matilda fled at Winchester, it was probably the safest castle that was close by to Winchester. But I doubt it was. She probably didn't stay there for very long because it would have been relatively vulnerable. It's not a particularly strong castle, but it would have been a safe haven in an emergency.
Mm-hmm. And Dave Weston has asked, would the Iron Age ditch have been visible or significant by the time the castle, by the sort of the Norman period? No,
the ditch was backfilled in the kind of early Roman period, as far as I'm aware. So it's likely that it wouldn't have been visible in the medieval period. But obviously, if the Iron Age hill fort, if it is there, that would have been visible and was probably extended as well and strengthened in the medieval period.
Okay, that's it for the. Oh, Mike McQueen has just asked that said that the historic environment record shows a Celtic field system just to the west of the farm buildings.
Yeah, there's a number of field systems that kind of fan out from the castle.
That's one of the disadvantages of an online conference is you've got people on the HER as you're talking.
Yeah.
Checking up on things, which is really handy. And Mike certainly knows his way around the HER. Right. Thanks, Mike.
Ray, this is the only indication of this ditch? There's no other, it's not been seen in anything else?
No, it's the first indication. Obviously, there's been very little because Castle Farm is a working farm. We were lucky that they were building a new barn, and we were able to monitor during the building of the castle. But unfortunately, no, there's no other evidence of it. And while it is relatively substantial, I think modern agricultural practices probably would have covered up most of it. Ludgershall Castle is relatively overgrown. So it may not be possible to see earlier features in the landscape. Yeah.
It's intriguing, isn't it? It's got that you've got that little bit, and then it's just, I know.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to open up a larger area. The landowner, he was interested, but he wasn't that interested. But, it's something definitely for future research potentially. See if we can pick up more Iron Age evidence within the vicinity of the castle, and also maybe potentially find more evidence within the castle. Iron Age evidence within the castle.
There's just a comment in the chat from Melanie Pomeroy-Killinger about some early geophysics having undertaken in the 70s. Tony Clark did some mag, but the results didn't show anything.
Okay.
So
might be something for maybe with more modern techniques, see if we can pick up better. So if someone can get some funding to do it, potentially.
Or LiDAR, of course.
Or LiDAR, of course, yeah.
But again, nothing was shown up before. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Melanie's just said that we need lots of geophysics to be undertaken. Oh yeah, and Andy Payne is just commenting that the magnetometry would have been more basic back then as well.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. It just adds to the story, but it's obviously something small excavation, but it adds to the wider story.
It does, and I think it shows the value of this sort of excavation. Do you know what I mean? It is a small excavation, but actually the questions it's now, getting us to ask and think about is really, really good and really valuable.
Yeah, it also shows the importance of watching briefs. Is that it started out as a watching brief.
Absolutely.
We probably won't find anything because it's a farm, but then subsequently moved on to an excavation once we realised what we had. So it showed the systems were.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Melanie is just another comment on here, just saying in her view, it's definitely an Iron Age enclosure pre-castle.
Yeah. I think most people are of the opinion it probably is definitely an Iron Age enclosure, but it's just until we find firm evidence we can't. We can't say.
And if anyone was feeling really enthusiastic, we've got the site archive in the museum, but that's about my guess is about 30 boxes. So somebody could have a rootle through and see if they can find some nice Iron Age pot.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and it needs some more excavation, you're saying, of the southern enclosure.
So we could definitely do. Yeah. So someone will have to. British Heritage, will they be willing to fork out 50 grand so we can stick a machine bucket through the?
Unfortunately, current situation, probably not. I think it's I think they'd be interested in other research groups or academic projects and stuff. They're very supportive of that. But it is an interesting area and it is an interesting site. The whole sort of thing is very good. Brilliant. Are there any other questions?
No, that's it for the questions.
That's excellent. Brilliant. Ray, is the report available now?
It is, yeah. All Cotswold Archaeology's reports are available on our website, Cotswold Archaeology's website. And there's also a journal article, I believe, coming out in the local journal as well. So yeah,
that's coming in WAM. I've seen the initial list.
It's coming in WAM, is it? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, look on the Cotswold Archaeology website. I know you've got a lot of the reports and the grey lit and everything on there. So
yeah, and we have a map as well, so you can zoom into your area and find what we've done in those areas. And other companies have similar systems as well. So
yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's worth looking into. Fantastic. In that case, I think we'll draw tonight to a close. Thank you very much again. That was really, really interesting. Again, unfortunately, we have a silent applause. And that's fantastic. Thanks, Ray. Really good. Just to remind people that tomorrow evening, 7:30, is the last of our talks for this year's conference, and that's by Richard Osgood on the Operation Nightingale project at Oldbourne, the Digging Band of Brothers project at Oldbourne. So we'll see people tomorrow evening. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
bye.